In July 1980, Brenda Marie Gerow, the eldest among her siblings, vanished after leaving with her boyfriend at the time, John Jack Kalhauser. Prior to her disappearance, she had been employed at a convenience store and worked as a bartender in a Drake, Massachusetts establishment frequented by bikers. While she maintained contact with her family and even expressed her intention to return home, she never followed through. Her family made efforts to report her missing, but local authorities declined assistance, citing her status as an adult when she went missing. On April 8, 1981, the body of an unidentified white female was discovered in the desert near Houghton Road and Interstate 10 in Tucson, Arizona. Hunters driving through the area noticed a jacket hanging from a tree and upon further investigation, stumbled upon the woman's lifeless body on the ground. The victim, estimated to be between 18 and 22 years old, had suffered from strangulation by ligature, which was determined as the cause of death during the autopsy. Her body showed signs of severe beating and sexual assault. Due to advanced decomposition, her facial features were unrecognizable and her eye color remained indeterminate. The examining pathologist concluded that she had a fair complexion, long light brown to blonde hair, and a noticeable white spot on one of her upper front teeth. Her height was estimated to be approximately 5 feet 2 inches to 5 feet 3 inches, and she weighed around 100 to 110 pounds at the time of her demise. Harsh winds may have dispersed additional evidence at the scene. The victim was found wearing denim jeans, white socks with pink pom-poms, a white bra, blue underwear, and brown suede shoes. Notably, she had a distinctive blouse with dark blue puffy reddish-colored sleeves adorned with a flower design. A denim jacket was also discovered hanging in the brush nearby. Law enforcement thoroughly documented the crime scene, capturing photographs, and even conducted aerial photography to search for additional clues. Despite the advanced stage of body decomposition, her fingerprints were still discernible and subsequently collected. Dental records were obtained, and years later, her DNA was also obtained for future identification purposes. In 2006, a DNA profile from another individual was extracted from her clothing, leading to the creation of a potential suspect DNA profile once the analysis was completed in 2007. However, at the time of the victim's discovery, authorities in Tucson were unable to obtain her fingerprints. As a result, her hands were severed from the body and sent to the FBI, who successfully obtained fingerprints but found no matches in their records of missing persons or individuals arrested for crimes. The case was compared to various missing person cases, all of which were eventually ruled out. The victim's clothing, with some pieces suggesting potential involvement in the local county fair during the time of her murder, offered some leads to investigators. Images of her clothing were widely circulated on websites, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children posters, and news reports in the hopes of identifying her. It was determined that she had likely been walking or running through a wooded area before her death, as evidenced by the scratches on her body. Initially, a crude sketch of the victim was created and publicized through television and newspapers, but it failed to yield any recognition from the local community. In 2012, the victim's body was exhumed, and her facial features were digitally reconstructed using a CT scan of her skull. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children sponsored the scan to approximate her appearance in life. Various theories surrounded the victim's background and fate. Investigators considered the possibility that she had been a runaway during her childhood, experienced estrangement from her family, was murdered elsewhere and dumped at the crime scene, or hitchhiked to Tucson from another location. Early in the investigation, there was speculation that she might have been a victim of the then unidentified Golden State Killer, who had been active since the mid-1970s and had possibly relocated southward. During the investigation into assault charges against John Jack Kalhauser in 1995, a photograph depicting a young woman with light hair holding a bouquet was discovered in his possession. In late 2014, law enforcement authorities announced that they believed the photograph was connected to the case of Pima County Jane Doe and promptly released it to the public. The woman in the photograph bore a resemblance to the reconstructed image of the victim and matched her physical description. The photograph was estimated to have been taken between 1979 and 1981, aligning with the time frame when Jane Doe's body was found. However, Kalhauser refused to cooperate with authorities when asked to identify the woman in the photograph. The unidentified woman's photograph was then circulated to the public in late 2014 after investigators established the connection with the facial reconstruction. It was noted that the background scenery in the picture seemed to resemble a former camping area in Tyngsboro, Massachusetts, located in the eastern part of the country. On December 23, 2014, Bill Gerow Jr., the brother of the potential match in the photo, received notification from the police suggesting that the woman in the picture could be his sister. Bill Gerow Jr. had last seen his sister, who was 20 years old at the time, in 1980 when she voluntarily left the state with Kalhauser, her boyfriend. They had met at a nightclub, but she never explained the reason for her departure. Although her family believed she had run away, Gerow Jr. received a call from her a few weeks later while she was in New Mexico, after which she vanished without any further contact. Despite their ongoing efforts to locate her, she couldn't be officially reported missing as she was over 18 and had left voluntarily. Kalhauser had previous ties to Arizona and was believed to have murdered his wife, Diane Van Reeth, in 1995 while using an assumed name. Although her body was never found, Kalhauser was convicted of her murder in 1999. His criminal history included a conviction for the 1974 murder of Paul Chapman and an indictment for the attempted murder of a man in 1979. Following the 1979 indictment, Kalhauser jumped bail and fled after being released from jail. When he married Diane Van Reeth in Nevada, he assumed a false identity to avoid detection. Kalhauser was sentenced to 20 years in prison in Arizona for second-degree murder and completed his sentence on May 8, 2019, according to prison records. On September 28, 2015, it was revealed that the unidentified victim's body had been formally identified as Gerow in April 2015, and arrangements were made to return her remains to her family. The identification was made by comparing the family's DNA with that of the victim. Gerow's father expressed confusion regarding the motive behind his daughter's death. Kalhauser is considered a person of interest in the murder, and authorities have appealed to anyone with information about Kalhauser and Gerow's relationship in the late 1970s or early 1980s to come forward. Once the family received the remains, they were cremated. In 2017, Gerow's and Van Reeth's cases were featured on the second episode of Who Killed Jane Doe? On Investigation Discovery, and interviews were conducted with her brother and father.